How did it all start, Mumzworld, Mona?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here among marketeers, no less. How it all started. I've been an entrepreneur in the Middle East region now for 18 years. I became a mother of 3 children in 2011. I had 3 children under the age of 10. And I was a disgruntled customer. I was an entrepreneur. And as a disgruntled customer on one side and an entrepreneur on the other side, really I put the business plan together and launched it. That's simply put.
Did you always think you would continue pursuing work when you had the kids? Was that always the plan?
So when you have children, obviously for all the parents out there, your entire focus and priorities shift. You suddenly are embarking on this journey of responsibility. It's a blessing where, for me, I had my first 2 children were twins. So I was blessed with not 1 but 2 children. And with that blessing comes a tremendous amount of responsibility.
And tiredness.
And exhaustion, yes. And as I was articulating that consumer pain point on paper, I realized that the market for mother, baby, and child retail was still very much underdeveloped. And e-commerce specifically in this part of the world was still untapped. So the business plan was written. I shared the business plan with my partners at bait.com. And I said, this is not only a very promising idea, but it's a very important idea. And I think you guys need to find someone to launch this. And they came back to me and they said, if you launch it, we will invest in it. And for me, I was already overextended. I was working 20-hour days, raising 3 children and managing a business that I already had. So for me to launch a second business was inconceivable. Yet, as typically in the world, you are introduced to certain messages around you or points that direct you in a certain way. And I know that 4 potential investors came to me and they said, listen, we saw this business plan. It's a brilliant idea. Go launch it. We'll invest in it. And I remember we were vacationing that summer. And I gave myself a challenge. And I said that if I'm able to write the wireframe of this business by myself in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to launch this business. And when my children would go diving with their dad, I would work. When they would sleep, I would work. When they would be watching TV, I'd go into the bathroom, lock the door, and I would work so they wouldn't see me. So in lost hours, I would work. And 2 weeks later, I had the wireframe. And I turned to my husband and I said, I'm doing this.
No vacation for you?
There was no vacation since.
Have you had a vacation?
Not since, yes.
Are you still exhausted?
So look, yes and no. This is what I've signed up for. I'm driven by something that is, I believe, is important. It's impactful. And when you're driven by something that you've signed up for, I take full accountability. So is it more tiring than not doing it? Absolutely. But it's something that I love to do and something that is important to do.
So you were not at all surprised by the success?
So look, I can speak from my personal perspective as really an entrepreneur or as a business person. For me, it's never really about success or failure. That is not our kind of needle of weight. It is about, am I creating every single day a level of impact that is positive to my surroundings? Not only to the customer that we're serving, but to my children who I'm ultimately accountable for, and to my general ecosystem. So insofar that I'm creating positive impact, then that's successful. So the answer to your question is every day is a journey. Every day has its ups and every day has its down. And if I were to kind of weigh the traditional mark of success, I'd say, this is probably not successful because there's a big price to pay. What's that price been? It's a 110% commitment. I mean, I have my two of my young children here today. They kind of see the balance. They live the journey with me, and they are instrumental to kind of this journey.
Are you proud of your mum? Yeah. So that's lovely. You're raising. Have you got 3 boys or?
I have 3 boys.
So you're raising 3 boys to see a powerful, successful woman, mother, achieving these. Giddy heights. That's also a success. Do you see that as well? Does you feel that? So look, again,
if I go back
as a role
to
model, it's so
sure.
important.
So when I started my entrepreneurial journey back in 2000, I'll probably kind of share kind of that tipping point because it sheds some light into what I'm doing now and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I come from a Palestinian background. My grandfather and father were both uprooted from their homes. My grandfather in 48 within Palestine, and my father in 67 from Palestine to Lebanon. Fast forward to 1990, we as a family were uprooted from our home in Kuwait, where we were born and raised. We actually woke up one morning in our summer vacation to discover that Kuwait, where we were born and raised, was no longer a home that was ready for us to go back to. We could not go back. So in a blink of an eye, we didn't have a home to go back to, and we lost all the physical assets that we grew up with. So as a family, we had to reinvent ourselves. And we moved to the United States at the time, and that's when we really learned the value and the importance of accountability. At the end of the day, you cannot control situations, environment, the weather. You cannot even control the people around you. In essence, you can only control the decisions you make. And that was an initial learning for me. I started my career with Procter & Gamble in the United States. I was 20 when I started with them. I was fresh out of undergrad, so I was the youngest to start. And ever since then, this notion of there being limits disappeared. There are no limits, and I've never believed in limits. So within my corporate career and my entrepreneurial journey, I've always been driven by impact. I've always been driven by doing the things for the right reason, as opposed to the easy things, and that has always been the more difficult choice, but has opened many, many better doors in future.
And do you consider yourself brave?
I consider myself to be very strong, in the sense that I'm constantly challenging the status quo. I found the biggest milestones in my life have been the ones that have opened when I've taken brave decisions. So when I started with Procter & Gamble at a very young age was a very brave decision. When I went down the entrepreneurial journey in 2000, when I was in an upward trending career, paying very well, traveling Europe. It was a great career trend. Leaving that to come back to the region and become an entrepreneur and create impact was brave. Starting a second business when I had 3 children under the age of 10 was brave. Raising these children is brave. Every single day, you make decisions that are not conventional and not what is necessarily what everybody else chooses.
How do you multitask? Do you have some advice on how you manage it all?
So I was told recently, and this was very interesting because I was in Detroit at a leadership summit. And I was telling one of the leaders there, I said, I'm constantly multitasking, and I'm finding lately that I'm actually not able to focus on a particular project 100%. Is that normal when you multitask? And she directed me to a study now, some of you may have read the study by the Harvard Medical Institute, that they actually said that when you multitask, you're actually eroding the gray matter of your brain. So in essence, in reality, you should not be multitasking. The focus has to be on one thing at a time. You close it, you move on, you close it, you move on. So the answer to your question is every day for me is a balance of equilibrium, or a balance of priorities to reach equilibrium. So some days the priority is for my shareholders, others to my staff, others to my children. You have to constantly be balancing to reach that level of equilibrium in the time frame that you've given yourself.
Do you not find, though, that with family life, that sort of those decisions are always there? That I know that I find that even if I'm concentrating on a news story or an interview or something else is happening at work, the back of my mind is always, have I laid out the football kit at home? Or, have I done the things I need to do at home?
There is an endless list of to-dos, whether it's at home or outside your home. And in reality, that's true to working moms and non-working moms. It's true to dads, who have difficult jobs and not difficult jobs. So as an individual, it's the onus is on us to kind of prioritize and to segment what we do and why we do it, and really focus time on, I mean, what I've done is I've kind of laid out what are my values and what is it that I want to achieve in the next year, 3 years, and 5 years. And if my values are raising teenagers who are contributing members to society and ethical human beings, then all of my shift has to be there. So each of us has personal accountability to decide that for ourselves.
And how often are you sort of reworking those goals? Do you come back to them all the time? Are they constantly there?
Yeah, I'm constantly reworking. So your ultimate vision doesn't change. I've always been motivated by kind of impact stories. I read a quote a few years ago. It's a bit of a controversial quote, but it goes to the effect that if you haven't created positive impact, you should be ashamed to die. And kind of that directs me. You know, so every day, and I say this to my children, count every moment of every single day. Every moment counts. So you have a long-term vision, but every moment counts towards that ultimate vision, and you can kind of maneuver your way, but don't lose sight of why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing.
Do you think it's possible for women to have it all, or do you think there's always a compromise somewhere?
So what is all? What is all? For me, again, I was blessed again with having a fantastic career path with Procter & Gamble, really giving me fundamentals that taught me a lot of the things that I apply today. I worked with Johnson & Johnson in the region and in Europe that taught me how to kind of launch global brand and build global brands. So that was a blessing. And I fundamentally believe that when you are prepared, opportunity arises. So the more prepared you are, the more you work, the more opportunities come to your door. And then I was blessed with 3 children. So then I had to kind of shift my priorities. So for me, having it all when I had my 3 children was them. That was all. But when they were of an age where they understood, and particularly now, I mean, my kids actually tell me stay at work later, because they actually prefer it if I'm at work later, because they can play PS4 longer.
Fortnite?
And Fortnite, yes, we all have that. So look, you're constantly shifting as long as that vision stays.
Do you find time for yourself?
I do. So yes, I mean, time for myself is family time, is kids time, is with my team, when I'm inspired, when I'm learning. That's time for myself.
And tell me about your team and when you recruit and what you look for. Are you also asking them those kind of questions about impact and, you know, their goals? What are the sort of things you're aiming for with your team?
So skills are easy to find, but mindset is not easy to find. You can even train skills. People who come on board who have no skills, but they have a grit mentality, want to challenge the status quo, don't only do things that are comfortable for them. By the way, generally you find that people who are always in their comfort zone, it's reflected in all parts of their lives. It's reflected in how they work out. It's reflected in how they raise their family. It's reflected in their diet. If you're always in your comfort zone, you're in that kind of, you know, average status quo. And in the interviews, what I try to find is people who are out of that comfort zone and constantly reinventing that paradigm for themselves. It's not always easy to identify, honestly. But when you find that talent, it's magic.
Do you use the word brave in recruitment? Are you looking for bravery?
Yes, I use brave, I use bold. I'm looking for someone who's bold, and for someone who is positive. So the question that I always ask is, do you consider yourself to be a lucky person? I believe brave people consider themselves to be lucky because they're constantly inventing and reinventing themselves to create solutions to challenges, as opposed to saying, this is difficult, I'm moving away.
What's your top challenge then at the moment?
My top challenge? At Mumzworld?
Firstly at Mumzworld, and then perhaps personally as well. So
there are so many challenges in a startup. We'd have to be here for a couple of hours. There are even more challenges in an e-commerce startup. Perhaps I can share one of my greatest challenges at Mumzworld. I think this is worth kind of just shedding some light to it, because for me, really everything pales in comparison. And this was 3 years ago when we were in the A round funding. So we were no longer a small organization, so we didn't want the $1 million or the $2 million, and we weren't a giant organization, so we weren't asking for growth capital. We were in kind of that zombie land, where most startups actually fail, because while they have some momentum, they're not big enough to ask for a lot of money. So I and my partners, I had 2 partners at the time, we were asking for money, we were fundraising, and door after door would shut in our face for no reason. So when we would ask for feedback, they said, no, we're not interested. E-commerce is a fad. It's not going to last for long. Or, you're a mother of 3. How are you going to build a business? So we heard it all. And during that time, in parallel, so when I connect my work with my home, my husband had a very important project in the United States, so he's a very strong support network for him, and certainly I wouldn't have been able, and I won't be able to do what I do today without his support. But he was in the US most of the time for his project, and my 2 young boys were studying for a very difficult, competitive school that they wanted to get into. And this was happening during the fundraising. And during this time, both my partners put up their hands and said, this is too difficult. And they walked out. So I found myself without my right and left hand, without my operations and my commercial people. I found myself without my support network. My husband was traveling all the time, and my 2 children needed me at home to help them with this critical entrance exam. And there would be days when I would wake up in absolute fear of not knowing what tomorrow would bring. Will I be able to, tomorrow, have the payroll, or will I be able to pay my suppliers? So you actually wake up with uncertainty and fear. And we overcame. We raised our round, and when we raised our round, everything started to pick up momentum. So everything after that, I think, pales. So for me, once I came out of that, I said, you know what, if I can handle that, and that lasted 2 years. Didn't last 2 months, it lasted 2 years. So if I could do that, I can do pretty much many things.
And the school?
And they got into school. And they actually, I was talking to an investor in San Francisco. We were pitching, a very big investor. And in the middle of the pitch, I got an email from their school to say they got in, and I cut the pitch. I said, excuse me, I have a family emergency, I need to go. And I went home and I gave them the news. Yeah.
Fantastic. So people said e-commerce was a fad, clearly. We're in a whole different level now. What do you think the challenge is there, or what are sort of consumers' expectations, and how do you deliver that? Where do you see it going?
The consumer expectations are very simple. I mean, the rules of engagement haven't changed. At the end of the day, organizations have to be customer-centric and customer-obsessed in order for them to grow. You have to create true intrinsic customer value, or else you're a short-term business. I think we're living today in a day and age where a lot of organizations are, for lack of a better word, almost morally bankrupt or consumer bankrupt. We're losing sight of what the consumer wants, because the world is changing, automation is coming and changing the playing field. So for us, we are very laser focused on understanding that customer, delivering products and services that can deliver to what she needs, what she knows she needs today, and what we can preempt she will need tomorrow.
Is it mostly women? I know it's Mumzworld, but do you get men shopping as well?
We do get men shopping. So I get asked that question a lot. They said, fathers shop as well. My husband shopped all the time. Look, yes, a lot of fathers shop. At the end of the day, the gatekeeper today for the children is the mother. So
it's been a privilege to interview you. I'm taking up all your time. I'm sure some of you have some questions. Do you have some questions? Yes.
I have a question.
Asma.
My question is, after you raised the money that you struggled with for 2 years, what was the reaction from those 2 partners who walked out and left you?
This would have been my question.
I really want to know.
Did you hear? Aspen wants to know the two partners, the right and left hand, who walked out when the money was raised, what their reaction was.
So frankly, for me, it was irrelevant. These partners decided that this was not what they signed up for. It was too difficult for them, and that's to each his own. Again, and I say this to a lot of people, entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and entrepreneurship in an ecosystem that's underdeveloped is not for everyone. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So seriously, you need to have a certain mindset and a certain paradigm to be able to go down that road, and you're creating and inventing new things on a daily basis. The world is changing, and we are in constant stage of fast innovation and failing fast. And it's not for everyone. So for me, it wasn't the right thing for them. And hats off to them. So,
Very magnanimous.
but we raised the money, so that's what counts. And we went on, by the way, after that, we raised 3 more times after that round. So the business after that continued to double and triple every single year. So that was really a tipping point that pushed the brand to the next level.
Any other questions? Omar, we've got a good question from you. Yeah.
Talk, right? So what's next? What's next for you? Because things are also moving quite quickly in e-commerce and in the region, and obviously Amazon, all these different things. What's your strategy for what's next, and maybe even exit strategy?
So look, we are a vertical pure play. We are not a horizontal. So Amazon and Noon are horizontal. If you look at global trends, globally you have 2 horizontals typically battling each other. You look at India, you look at Europe, you look at the United States. It's typically Amazon and one other player. And then you have the vertical specialized sites who dominate on verticals. Why are verticals important? Verticals are important because they can focus on breadth and depth that the horizontals don't focus on. They can focus on services and product offerings, line extensions that horizontals don't care about, because it's out of their strategic business. So for us, we have the baby registry, the gift registry, the diaper subscription, and a plethora of other extensions that are particular for the mother needs that horizontals frankly don't care about. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating a customer-centric experience that is unique. And this is something that is proven globally to be very, very important. So what's next for us? We are creating an indispensable online extension of a mother's life. Today we have over 2.5 million mothers registered with us. We ship to 20 countries across the region. We're doubling and tripling our numbers every single year. We're building the largest mother, baby and child company in the Arab world. We are focused on customer need and pain point elimination. What that means from a business standpoint, whether it's exit or merger, frankly, for me, is irrelevant.
Hi, Mona. This is Flo from Brave. I remember we had the conversation about our...
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
About our co-founders walking out on us. That was an interesting experience that we share. I just wanted to say congratulations on your latest fundraising and announcements and your success. And I guess we look up to you as entrepreneur in terms of what's next and how you approach things. And certainly as a female entrepreneur and as a working mom, you're an amazing role model. Thank you for being there. And I just wanted to ask you for any tips you would give to either existing entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs that are looking to make the leap into entrepreneurship. As you say, entrepreneurship tends to be quite glamorized. It is hard work. It is a roller coaster ride. But I think it's worth the journey. But what would be your tips to other entrepreneurs?
Did you all have that tips for young budding entrepreneurs?
So again, I come back to what I said earlier, and this is really, really important, and that is take responsibility and take accountability for what you want to do. So insofar that you are very clear on what your vision is, understand that the path towards that vision is going to be a difficult one. And there are a lot of things, and I gave a talk last year which was quite controversial, but I fundamentally believe this. You control very little around you. You really do. You don't control how people around you react. You, in fact, don't even control the ecosystem. I mean, you see this ecosystem evolving and changing in crazy ways every day. You don't control the weather, the seasons. You control your reaction and your action. And insofar that you are very crystal clear on what you're doing for the right reason, great things happen. They may not happen immediately, but they will eventually. That's the first thing. The second is, we've heard this cliche, but it's real, and that is, this is not a race, this is a marathon. It took us 2 years to raise that A round. There were many days where I would wake up and I would say, this is hard. This is really, really difficult. But I continued plodding along and got to the light at the end of the tunnel. So just keep doing it. Keep doing it till you can't do it anymore. And the last thing I will say is, if leadership and entrepreneurship was easy, everyone would do it. That's why we're here. Leaders are here because not everyone can or wants to do it.
Do you think we're moving towards a society and businesses that are generally more impactful and sustainable, that is becoming more the norm?
I believe so, because consumers are now very discretionary, they're very aware, the world is changing so quickly to things that we are so unfamiliar with. The world for our children is very different than what we're used to. So creating impact stories and businesses that really add value and turn the needle on positive contribution to humankind, I think is so important. It's so important. And if you look at, again, the social media aspect that I think is morally bankrupt, and it's influencing our children, I think we need to rise above that and create businesses that go above that and dilute that.
In what way do you think social media is
Anybody here from Facebook? Yes? Hi.
Let's tell them why they're morally bankrupt.
Nothing
shall we?
personal. Okay.
Why-
This is filmed as well. That's
Yeah.
good.
Why do you tell me more about your thoughts on that, because that is a little bit controversial, but there are many conversations being had about this all over the world at the moment. What's happening with social media, young people particularly.
So look, there's a slew of ways in which operating business is the way we operate, and we won't operate. So, for example, sharing of information. Until today, the traditional rules of not spamming people or not emailing people who haven't given you permission to do the permission marketing aspect, privacy laws, all of that is really, really important. I think we're going to go full circle. I really do. So as an organization, for us, we have 2.5 million moms, but we don't dare talk to 2.5 million moms unless we have permission. Yeah. And when we have that permission.
Mm-hmm. And what about social media and the way our children are accessing it? How you rarely see a teenager now. I mean, I was saying earlier over lunch, it makes me sad to see a group of teenagers out together and they're all on their phone. They're not interacting with each other anymore. They're sitting in a line looking at their phone. I mean, they're interacting on Fortnite with each other, but feels like there are some basics that are being lost. Would you agree with that, or do you think this is an opportunity for young people?
I think the reality is we as adults are fighting it, but I fundamentally believe the children have to figure it out themselves, because you try to ban and eliminate. At the end of the day, they have to figure it out. They have their world is more difficult than our world. They're filled with information that is all over, almost information overflow, and you just have to give them the confidence and the values to be discretionary and to rise above that. And the more you try to control them, the more you're going to lose them. And we see that. They're going to lie to you, they're going to go behind your back, and they're going to do things that they shouldn't do, as opposed to say, you know what, it's your life, you need to figure it out. Because that is today's world, unfortunately.
And they will figure out that real human interactions are the best kind.
They will.
Yeah.
They need to.
They need to. I think we're out of time, aren't we? Are we, Khaled? Yeah. Unless there's one final burning question, and then.
Is the business now moving on to the rental part as well on your business?
To the rental?
Yeah.
You can rent a product. Okay. No, but that's a great idea.
Entrepreneurship. We talk about it.
Great idea, thanks.
Mona,
What has happened now in India is that the furniture, you don't have to buy. You can take on rental, try it out. If it suits your house, then you buy it. Otherwise, you can change it as well. So that's because your inventory, your like pram, for example, not going to be used by for a couple of years as well. Used 1, 6 months, 8 months, then what happened after that as well? That can come back and recycle as well.
Great, thank you.
An absolute pleasure to have your thoughts today. It's lovely to be in conversation with you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Really lovely to meet you. Thank you.